When we see one face, a child carried across a famine landscape, we instinctively feel a pull to help. But when we hear that 1 billion people live in extreme poverty, our brains often shift into a kind of analytical paralysis. The suffering becomes a statistic, and the empathy we feel for an individual child gets lost in the sheer scale of the problem. That same paralysis drives global policy toward massive top-down solutions. Think of events like Live Aid. These are the massive charity movements meant to end poverty in one giant sweeping motion through sheer financial force. This has created a decades-long tug-of-war in development economics. One camp demands trillions in foreign aid to jumpstart economies, while the other argues that flooding local markets with free money actually destroys them, creating a cycle of dependency. These massive ideological arguments are almost exclusively held in the wealthy offices of New York and London. In those boardrooms, policymakers rarely stop to investigate the actual needs of the people living on 99 cents a day. Solving global poverty requires us to move past these top-down ideologies. We have to look closely at the lives of the poor and investigate the specific, rational logic behind the choices they make just to survive. This is the classic poverty trap diagram. On the x-axis is income today, on the y-axis, income tomorrow. The assumption is that the poor are stuck on this flat line because they are too malnourished to work efficiently. If they could just get a little more money, they would buy cheap, calorie-dense foods, gain strength, and work their way up the steep part of the curve. Real-world data contradicts this curve. When the extremely poor get a slight increase in income, their overall caloric intake often drops. Instead of maximizing energy, the extra money scatters toward more expensive, less efficient choices. People spend that new income on tastier calories like sugar and meat, or on items that have nothing to do with nutrition. In remote Moroccan villages, you will find families who lack enough food but have saved for months to buy a television and a satellite dish. Basic survival calories like bananas and rice are cheap enough for almost anyone to buy. What the poor desperately need is an escape from the crushing boredom and depression of their daily lives. A cup of sweet tea or a television provides the immediate psychological relief that makes their environment bearable. This need for immediate comfort creates a tragic blind spot. Parents often ignore cheap long-term health investments for their children, like micronutrients or deworming, because the economic payoff is invisible and takes decades to materialize. This connects the adult psychology to a structural trap. While adults usually find enough calories to keep working, a few cents for iodine or deworming during childhood can double a child's future income. Missing that investment because of a preference for sugar or entertainment creates a disadvantage that locks the next generation into the same cycle. We see a similar pattern in healthcare. Many assume the poor are physically trapped by diseases like malaria or dysentery because solutions are too expensive. But water-purifying chlorine and anti-dysentery packets are practically free. Even so, in villages where these illnesses are the leading cause of death, the number of families using these cheap preventatives is often under 10%. At the same time, these families willingly spend massive amounts of money on unqualified Bengali doctors for expensive, often dangerous treatments. They borrow at high interest to pay for antibiotics and IV drips, ignoring the penny-a-day prevention that would have kept them out of the clinic. This behavior is a rational response to a broken system. Public clinics are notoriously unreliable. In rural India, you can walk miles to a health center only to find it closed, as absentee rates for government staff exceed 40%. Furthermore, without a basic education in biology, it is difficult to see how a powder or a pill works. Many logically, but incorrectly, conclude that medicine is only effective if injected directly into the blood. Randomized controlled trials show how thin margins are. If you charge even a tiny fraction of a cent for a malaria bed net, demand vanishes. But when nets are given away for free, families take them, they hang them, and they use them to protect their children. These families are navigating a landscape of broken public infrastructure and predatory private alternatives. They make calculated choices based on the unreliable systems available to them, without the luxury of trial and error. The poor are not irrational actors. They're exactly like us, but they are operating under an immense cognitive load. without any of the invisible safety nets we take for granted. In wealthy nations, we don't have to actively choose to chlorinate our tap water or verify a doctor's degree. Those choices are automated by the state. We are nudged towards the right health decisions by the very structure of our society. Massive ideological debates over global aid are a distraction. On the ground, poverty manifests as a series of specific, localized, and solvable problems. The solution is to use randomized controlled trials to test specific microlevers. We can determine exactly what works, whether it's making bed nets totally free or adding iodine to table salt to boost childhood development. By abandoning our assumptions and rigorously testing small interventions, we can remove the daily cognitive tax of poverty. This is how we build the invisible ladders people need to pull themselves up, a methodology that has now earned the highest